There's a path here I've never seen before. It's pretty wet, so I don't know if I want to actually go there. But that's what he said. God, look at this. We artists tend to be the emotional kind, and we have the highest highs and the lowest lows. And while music has always been something that has allowed me to deal with those emotions and channel those emotions, it helps to expand your emotional control into other areas of your life so that you can enjoy a more balanced and healthy and functional life. Emotions are funny things because while we feel them, they feel undeniable and truthful, yet we can feel like it's not really what we want to feel or what we're meant to feel. So when you have those type of powerful forces wrestling inside of you, and both of them feel true in different ways, how do you reconcile the fact that you're feeling something which you know you don't really believe that you think, yet you have that emotion inside of you? You're not a slave to your emotions. Just because they are happening right now doesn't mean that's the full story, doesn't mean that's the full extent of what you're actually facing. And you should never act purely based on that emotional roller coaster. In a micro moment, in a small moment, you might be going through certain things and your body and your mind is trying to compute how to react to it. So just because there's an emotion, it doesn't doom you to a destiny. It just means that you are processing whatever is coming your way. The problem is that if you deny what you're currently feeling, it's going to create a lot of dissonance in your psyche. And this is where most people get into trouble, because they try and deny their emotions. When you are not acknowledging and accepting that they are taking place in you, you're not being honest. Being honest with yourself is exactly like being honest with other people. And we know what happens when you're not honest with people. It never ends well. It creates friction and conflict and mistrust. And all of that will come out eventually. So don't try and do that. The first thing you have to do is to accept the presence of the emotion, to accept that it's actually happening and taking place in your body, in your mind. You have to be able to say, yes, this is how I'm feeling. And even if you recognize that it's wrong, that's okay. You don't have to think about that step yet. You just accept what is happening and stop blaming yourself of it. Stop judging and convicting yourself to something that you haven't even followed through. You haven't even thought through. You haven't felt it through. And you need to allow yourself to go through the motions, to really figure out where you are in relation to that emotion. So usually what happens is you feel an emotion, you feel a thought coming to you, and you recognize that it's something you don't want to follow. It's a bad thought. And in that moment, people panic and they say, no, that's not real. That's not a real thing. That's not what's happening inside of me. You might not think it's a big deal. You might think it doesn't matter that much. But that internal conflict is going to start manifesting itself inside of you. And every time you come in contact with anything similar to the initial situation where you didn't face and accept what you were going through, it's going to come back, and it's going to come back stronger, and it's going to cripple you even more. So here's a blueprint. You're in a situation, there's an emotion brewing inside of you, or several of them. They might feel wrong, they might feel embarrassing, anything like that. It doesn't matter what it is. You need to face it. You need to say, you know what, this isn't what I want to feel. This isn't what I believe in. I don't believe that it's right. It's not a path I want to follow. And I wish that it weren't so, but it is happening inside of me. And maybe you know why you're feeling that way, but a lot of the time you don't. And that's okay. You need to give yourself a bit of wiggle room to figure it out. Because if your first reaction is to blame yourself and convict yourself of some sort of a moral crime, or simply shut down, which is what a lot of people do. They shut down until the emotion has passed, and then they just move along. Doing that doesn't allow you to actually work on the issue. If you fight your emotions, you are simply creating more problems for yourself. Once you accept it, then you only need to figure out where that is coming from, instead of blocking it and you still have that issue. But now you need to start explaining to yourself why you did that. And now you have 2 layers of issues, which I don't really recommend doing. So I invite you to be more forgiving with yourself and offer yourself the same love you would offer a good friend. A good friend doesn't judge you based on your past shortcomings. They judge you based on your intentions and your current actions and how those actions map to those intentions. And you need to give yourself some of that same love and understanding, and recognize that while the emotions that you are currently feeling and going through, while they may be true in this moment, it doesn't necessarily map to or mean that you're going to do something, or it doesn't mean that you are a certain way. Because when you accept what is happening inside of you, when you accept and acknowledge your emotions, now you have a choice to do something else. You regain your control over it. The fight isn't over, but now you have a chance to choose and do something different. You only get that choice if you acknowledge what's there. Because if you don't, then you will begin that fight of trying to explain to yourself why you're not feeling that way, or why that or this isn't happening. And that's problematic because it's not based on the truth. And until you're willing to do so, you are a prisoner of your emotions. The only way to break their control is to acknowledge it, put it out there. You need to give it away. It's the things that we keep in the dark that control us. But once you shed light on those dark things, they become exposed. And now you can actually see them truthfully as what they actually are. And when you see the source of your anxiety or depression or whatever emotional issues you might be going through, once you see them in their true form, then you can actually realize that they weren't actually the demon that you thought they were, that it was really merely a perception of something. It was a judgment you laid upon yourself that was the cause of the issue. And simply by not facing it, you allowed it to grow and establish its control over you. And the silliest thing about this is that the initial problem, the initial emotion might have not even been that big of a deal. That if you simply said, yes, this is what I'm feeling, this is what is happening, and you acknowledge it and you accept it, then you could have been able to, in a day, in a few hours, in a few weeks, in a few months, you realize that, okay, I see, this is why I was feeling this way, this is why this was happening. It wasn't a big deal. So by accepting and acknowledging what's happening, you retain control. And that's really the best you can do. That's really the only thing you can do. You give yourself some space to think this through. And you also give yourself some air to breathe. Because if you don't, then you feel like you're suffocating and you don't know what to do. You don't know what you feel. You don't know what you think. And then you lose yourself. So don't be a prisoner of your emotions, because they're only one part of the story. Don't panic. Don't be so eager to lay judgment on yourself. Give yourself some time. Give yourself some space and some air to breathe, and you'll be fine. You'll figure it out. You'll get to the truth of it. Finished.